Hi, I'm Johan Sanneblad and I'm the author of the plugin Notebook Navigator for Obsidian. In this video, I walk you through everything you need to know to get started and mastering Notebook Navigator in every different way to make it feel like you have designed your own notebook editing environment that is specifically adapted for your needs. By the end of the video, you will have set up this vault with shortcuts. You have folders, you have tags, you have properties, manual sorting, chapter organizations, word counts, calendars, journal entries, and much, much more. The entire video is sorted into chapters, and if you want to read more about a specific topic, you can jump specifically to that chapter. This video has also been translated into 21 different languages, so enable subtitles and you can read the subtitles in your own native language to make it easier to follow along. Thank you for using Notebook Navigator. If you have already installed Notebook Navigator, jump ahead one chapter. Otherwise, I'll show you how to get started. Click on Settings and click on Community Plugins. To install Notebook Navigator, you need to first exit restricted mode. This enables Community Plugins. Then you click on Browse and you search for Notebook. Click on Notebook Navigator, click on Install, and then click on Enable. Now you will see the welcome screen with the Mastering Notebook Navigator video, which is probably the main reason why you're here watching this video. I'll watch the movie later, and I close the Community Plugin browser, and I will also close the Settings window. Okay, Notebook Navigator is installed, and to the left here in the sidebar, you will see all the files you have in the root vault of your folder. Typically, most users want to expand this sidebar a bit when using Notebook Navigator, so you just drag it like this, and you will now see two panes of Notebook Navigator. To the left, you have the navigation pane that shows you folders, tags, and properties, and shortcuts and recent files. And to the right, you see the files of that specific folder you're located in. If you have limited screen space, of course, you can use it with just one pane at a time. So just resize it like that, and you can go back to the root folder like this, and click on it to your files. You can also use the keyboard to navigate, so click on left or right, or Shift Tab and Tab. So this keyboard navigation is really simple if you want to just move around with your keyboard to navigate your folders. This is something that is not possible with the built-in Obsidian file browser. This is only available with Notebook Navigator. So typically I like to work with two panes at a time, so this is something like I typically like to work with it. To the left here, as I said, you have the folders and tags and properties. So if I click on a tag here, for example 50mm, I will see all my files that are tagged with a 50mm tag. So all this is in the same place. And you can do some really cool things. You can drag, for example, notes if you want to drag them to add tags or remove tags immediately like that. But we'll get more into that later. There's one button I just want to show you right now, and if I go to the root vault like this, you have this really important button at the top. It's called Show Files from Subfolders. And with this button off, we only show in the right pane the number of files that is in this specific folder. But if I enable Show Files from Subfolders, boom, you now see all files in all subfolders of the current vault. So if I scroll back to the top here like this, you will see that there are so many more files in some of the subfolders. And in each file here, you see that it says 2026 here. This means that this file is located in the folder called 2026. There's even a command. I can call a command called reveal file. And that will just open the file in the folder it was located in. And this is very handy. For example, in this case, I have notes from 3 different years. So if I go to the top folder like this and disable it, I only see the files in that specific folder. But if I enable it, I see all the files in all the subfolders like that. So if you sometimes get lost, if you see too many files in the navigation, maybe you have show files from subfolders clicked on, just then disable it to view files that are only in the folder you are viewing it. Okay, let me show you 3 things I think most of you want to change before we continue. And the first one is what happens when you resize the left sidebar like this. By default, as you can see, it changes into a single pane like this, so you can click back and forth. But you can actually change that behavior. So what you do is that you go into settings like this, and if you use Obsidian 1.13, you can have settings open while you actually see what's happening in them. And with Obsidian 1.13, of course, you can search settings. So in this case, we search for sidebar. And you can see there's a setting here that says when sidebar is too narrow. Click on that one. And now we can change what happens when it becomes too narrow. And in this case, we can change it to a vertical split instead. So if I now resize the left sidebar like this, and you can see now you have the panes above each other like this instead. So you have the navigation on top and the files on bottom instead. If you have a tall screen, I think this might be what you prefer instead. You can also change do nothing. So if you really want to squeeze things like this, or you just want to keep it, you can do that as well, of course. But let's go back and let's keep it to single pane like this. But many of you, of course, if you have a tall screen, you want to use vertical split instead. The other setting we want to do is that, remember when we toggled on show files from subfolders, you see all these images, and those images are located in my resources folder. And I really don't want to hide that. So go into settings, and again, we search for hide folders. And in this case, I have the resources folder in my root, so I will just tab /_star like this. And this will hide all folders in the root that are prefixed with an underscore. And in this case, it will hide the resources folder. So what do you do if you want to see then temporarily this folder and the contents? You have a setting in the top of the navigation pane called show hidden folders, tags and notes. So if I click on that one, you will see the folder, you can click on it, and you will see all the contents within that folder. You can select the files if you want like this. Then just click the button again to only show the files that are not in that folder. In this settings, you have the hide folders. You can also hide so many other things. You can hide specific files. You can also exclude specific folders from descendants. So if you show files from subfolders, maybe you want to exclude some folders, like for example your journal. Maybe you don't want to see your journal when you view the entire vault like this. You can hide specific tags. You can hide note with specific tags, or you can hide note with property rules. So for example, if you have a specific property set to a specific value, you can choose to hide it in Notebook Navigator as well. The third thing I want to change is the sorting. So search for default sort, and this is the default sort order in Notebook Navigator. The default sort order is date edited with the newest files on top. Typically, I like to use date created with the newest created files on top. So if I then show files from subfolders again, and go back to top, and you will see I have the sorted by that. And by default, you also have sorting by group. So you have the today group first, you have yesterday, the previous days, and previous 30 days, and so on. So if you scroll down like this, you can see notes by each specific group. And this can, of course, also be changed how you want to group things by these menus. But we'll go into that later as well. Okay, I think this is kind of the basic setup. You can configure what happens when you resize the left sidebar. You can choose to hide specific folders or files. And you know how to use the show files from subfolders. And you have changed the default sort setting if you wanted that as well. Okay, let me show you how I typically work with Notebook Navigator and Obsidian. But before that, we need to change two very important keyboard bindings in Obsidian. So go into settings, click on hotkeys, and search for create new note. And when you create a new note in Obsidian by pressing Command N, what it does is that it creates a new note either in the root folder, in the same folder as the current file, or in a specific folder. And you can change that in the Obsidian settings. However, when you're using Notebook Navigator, you always want to create a new file in the folder you have selected in the sidebar. And that does not happen when you create a new node with a built-in Notebook Navigator file creation. So you need to unbind this and instead bind it to Notebook Navigator, create new node, like that. Now, when you press Command N, it will send the command to Notebook Navigator that knows which folder it has selected and create a note in that specific folder. The other thing I want to change is the command Notebook Navigator open. And I typically bind this to Command Shift E. And this is to move keyboard focus from the editor into the sidebar. Let me show you. So let's say I'm in the editor, I'm writing text like this. And I want to move keyboard focus back to the sidebar. Then I press Command Shift E, and I'm now working the sidebar. So I can now navigate around like that. And if I just press right one more time, I'm back in the editor and continue working. So this is super smooth to give you full keyboard access to navigating around in your vault, including properties, tags, and folders. Let's say I want to create a new file then. So let's enable show files from subfolders, go into Tech Insights, and we can see that, yeah, the last newsletter was week 29. So let's create week 30. So click here, and we press Command N. And as you can see, it created now in the right folder. And we call it Tech Insights 2026 week 30. Now, I see I misspelled the name. So what I can do is I press Command Shift E, I press Enter, and if you're using Windows PC, you can press F2, and then go into change it like that, and press Enter, and you have renamed the file. I also say I put it in the wrong folder because I wanted to put it in the 2026 folder, and here you can just move it around by dragging it to the folder 2026 like that. And as you can see, it's still visible here since you have show files from subfolders enabled. Now, what I want to do here as well is I want to add a property to it. I can use that in the Obsidian command pane using add file property. And we add status and we call it writing. I will show you later how we will use these properties within Notebook Navigator. And finally, since this is a note I will be using quite a lot, I like to pin it. So you can click the pin icon like that. And the note will now stay pinned both in this folder, and if you go up one folder, it will stay pinned as well. So this is really handy. For example, say we are in a folder like 2024 here, and I pin this note. If I go up to the root, those two notes are still pinned. Of course, you can change this if you only want to see them pinned in their specific folders. But if you quickly want to find things that you're working with, here's a super nice way to find that. Let's unpin them. Now, the last thing I wanted to show you is something called auto reveal. And let's say I open another note here, for example, 2025 week 24. As you can see now in the left side pane, it changed both the current folder and it changed the current file to match what you opened. And if you don't want that, you can go into settings as well and you search for auto reveal. And there's a setting called auto reveal active note. So if you disable that one, and we go back, and I open another note, you can see that the sidebar didn't change. For many people, you maybe want this, but for me, I like to have it enabled. So when I open notes like that, it just moves the focus straight away. Okay, let's go into the shortcut section. Let's turn it into a dashboard of what we're working with right now. So if you look at the top left, you have shortcuts and it's empty right now. So let's drag up a few things from what I'm working for right now. So first of all, let's drag the folder 2026 up there. Let's drag the new Tech Insights weekly newsletter I'm working with. And let's also drag the photo tag 15 meter up there as well. Now, the shortcut section here, the first thing you can do is that if the list becomes big like this, you see it's pinned. If you have limited screen space on mobile and so on, you can unpin them and they will scroll with the list like that. You can also rename shortcuts. So if I right click on this long name here, and you can just rename shortcut, not rename note, rename shortcut. You can just call it active draft, like that. This is handy if you just want to different shortcut pointing to files with a different description of them. Now, the second thing here is that you see there's a number to the right of each shortcut, 1, 2, and 3. And this is so you can open them very quickly using keyboard shortcuts. So go into settings, click on hotkeys, and search for open shortcut. And here you will see open shortcuts 1 to 9. And in this case, I can bind it to Control 1, Control 2, Control 3. And now, if I go back into Obsidian and I press Control 1, I will go to select the folder. If I press Control 2, I will move to my file, the active draft. And if I press Control 3, I will move into the 50mm tag. So this is, if you're using different context or different projects, this is something that becomes second nature as you navigate around within Obsidian. So you also have another section beneath shortcuts called recent files. Just figured I mentioned this. If you click on it like that, you will see that it shows the most recent files you have opened. You can change the number of recent files you want to show here as well, if you want to show more or less. Now, let's see how we can work with a messy inbox. So click on the inbox folder like this, and how can we work with this? So for example, let's say you have two notes related to photography. We can take these notes and we can drag them onto the photo tag like this to tag them with the photo tag. Then we want to maybe move them out from the inbox now when we have tagged them. So let's click on this raw backup strategy, move it into tips, and click on the Sigma and move it into lenses like that. So the way you can just navigate around things, tag things, move around things, delete things. When you delete files, you have this confirmation property showing up the first time. If you want to change that, you can go into Notebook Navigator as well and just disable it. It's on the file operations, and you have confirm before deleting. You can also change if you want to ask before you delete attachments when you delete files, always or never. And you can also change how it will handle conflicts when you're moving files. So this was just a quick tips on how to get started with the shortcuts panel, set the shortcuts, tagging things, moving things around in a very easy and quick way. Okay, let me show you how the search function works within Obsidian and Notebook Navigator. The search function is available by pressing the search icon in top of the list pane. And there are so many different options and way you can search and filter nodes within Notebook Navigator. So if you press this information button to the right here, you will see all the details of all the things you can search and filter for within Notebook Navigator. Notebook Navigator by itself does not search the contents of all your nodes. If you want to do that, you need to install the plugin OmniSearch. And you can do that by going to settings, going to community plugins, browse and search for OmniSearch. Just install it and enable it and close. Now, if you want to search with OmniSearch, you just press this icon to the left in the search field like this, and it will switch to OmniSearch. Now you will have full text search within all the nodes. You can also press Command Up or Command Down to quickly switch between the advanced filter searches within Notebook Navigator or full text context search using OmniSearch. It all depends on what you want to do. For now, I will start with the search field. To be able to search and filter properties in addition to tags and files, you need to enable them in the property section in the navigation pane. I will show you. Remember, we added a property called status and set it to writing in the note we just created. So let's click on the configure property keys in the property section. And here you pick which properties you want visible in the navigation pane. So we pick the status, and you can also choose which you want to be able to configure in a list or in a file menu. Let's toggle all three. You can also click the row like this to quickly toggle all three. And if you also wanted to toggle all properties, you can do that as well. But for now, let's enable the status field and click on apply. Now, if you scroll down in the properties list here, you see that you now have status, you can see published, and you can see writing. And in this case, we click on writing. You see we have 2 notes, the new week 30 and one from 2025. So, let's begin search. Let's start with the searching for adding a search filter for notes that are have the status writing. So how do you do that? You click the search field. You can also add a hotkey to set focus immediately to the search field if you want to. Then you press dot and click status, and you set it to writing like that. Now, if I click the root folder like this, demo, you will see you have 2 notes shown because you have one in the 2025 folder and one that was from this year. You can then also add another filter here that says when the note was updated or created. So you say 2026, and now you will only see the notes with the property writing, and that was in this case created, which is what we saw right now in 2026. So you will also notice they have this star in the search field. So if I click this one, you can save this as a shortcut. And in this case, I also always want to start in the root folder because I always want to find all notes in my vault that has the status set of writing and is from 2026. And I will just save this as current draft, like that, and submit. Now we have a new shortcut, which is current drafts. And let me add quickly hotkey to add the shortcut 4 like that. And now if I go to the 2026 folder, I can close the search field like that. And I'm working with this note here, and maybe I want to see all the notes that are in the current drafts. I then press Ctrl 4 and move into the root vault, and I see all the notes with that property. Then if I want to change the status for this property for this note, I can actually just drag it into the other status called published like that, and it will now change the property into published, as you can see in the properties view here. If you want to change it back, I can just drag it to the writing. So this is typically, you don't want all your properties visible in the navigation pane. You want the properties visible, which are the properties you work with. And then you can just drag and drop to set the properties. You can actually also right click and choose set property to publish the writing that is, if you enabled it to be able to be visible in the menu. So all this is really handy to just quickly change the different property status. So more in search. Let's go into the photo folder like this, and we have lots of notes. Now let's say I want to see all notes with a 50mm tag like this. I can then command click or control click and click on 50mm, and I will now see all the notes in the photo folder and all subfolders, since I have the show file from subfolders, with the tag 50mm enabled. I can also filter more. I can add Sony, then have all the notes with Sony and the 50mm tag in that folder. Or I can add a minus before that, and I can get all the Sony notes that are not tagged with 50mm. And you can see in the left navigation bar here, that's a red color on the 50mm saying that, yeah, now we are not using that tag. Or now we're using it. You can also combine these. So if you command click 15 meter and then we hold command again and press shift and press 35 millimeter, you will now see all the files within the photo folder and all subfolders that are either 50 millimeter or 35 millimeter. Remember, if I unclick show files from subfolders, it will become empty because I have no files in this specific folder. If I enable it again, you will see that you see all the files again. So typically you want to change this quite often. So I often like to bind this toggle descendants to something like Command Shift D. And while we're at it, if you have also a shortcut called Search Hold Vault. This is kind of the thing I use most of the time, so I bind that to Command Shift S as well. So now when we are closing this, maybe close the search field, we go into another folder. I want to find something quickly in the vault. I can now press Command Shift S, and I'm now in the search field for the entire vault. Super quick to quickly find things in the vault. To go back, I just press Tab and then right, and I'm in the editor again, then can write things. And Command Shift E, back, be able to navigate around, right, back into the editor. So, how do you get started with Notebook Navigator if you're coming from another app? Let's say you're coming from Evernote. I mean, the current setup is almost exactly like Evernote. You have your shortcuts, you have your recent files, you have your folders, and you have your tags. I mean, everything is set up typically as you already have it within Evernote with the dual panes and so on. If you're coming from an app like Bear, for example, you probably work mostly with tags. This means that you probably want your tags to be shown above your folders. And you can do that by going to Settings and clicking Reorder Navigation. And here you can just choose to show the tags above the folders like that. And you can also reorder root folders. So if you, for example, want a specific order, root folders to appear in a specific order, maybe you want this folder to become visible in the top. You can just order them like that. So if I open the vault, you see that my folder taking sites is now shown in the top. You can also change, by default it's sorted by alphabetically. You can also, for specific folders, change the individual sort order. For example, if I right click this folder, you can change the sort order to, for example, from Z to A like that. And you will see you have a small arrow indicating that it has a reverse sort order for that folder. And yeah, for some folders it's very handy to do it like that. I will just revert it back to where it was, click set to alphabetic order, and move tags back down below folders. And if you're coming from day one, you'll probably wonder, where is my calendar? Where is my calendar notes? And we'll come to that in a later section. If you're writing a book or working with large documents that span maybe dozens or hundreds of markdown files, it has traditionally been very hard to work with those documents within Obsidian, and many writers have resolved to using tools like Scrivener or Ulysses to do that. With Notebook Navigator, you can do all this and much more right within the Obsidian environment, and I will show you exactly how. To do that, I have downloaded the Rust programming manual in Markdown format to this vault, and as you can see, the files are in a mess. If you remember earlier in this video, we changed the sort order to be sorted by date created, and we are also sorting the files by descending. So this means that if you scroll down this list, this is not workable. What we can do instead is that we can of course change it to sort by title and also change it to ascending. This is a little bit better, but now you have the forward and title page on the bottom, and you have the appendixes on the top. This is also not what you do. Of course the chapters are now looking better, but it's still not how you want it. So this is why you can do manual sort in Obsidian and Notebook Navigator. And you do this on a folder basis. So to enable manual sort, you click on the sort button and you have this manual sort option here. Now, before you click it, this current sort order shown in the list pane will be used as initial sort order used for manual sort. So if you had sorted by descending, for example, and enabled manual sort, I would start with the descending sort order. So make sure that your files are in as good position as possible before you enable the manual sort. Now, when I enable manual sort, it will give you a warning. It said that it will add a property to all my nodes called sort index. And this is just so the sort order is stored within the files. So you can use maybe another applications to open the documents, and they will appear in the same order there. Click on use manual sort and you're started. You can of course disable that notification dialog if you want that as well. Now, as you can see, you have this kind of sort index value added to the nodes, and you can see that it's 1000, 2000, 3000 and 4000 and so on. So how do we do this? Let's start with removing the appendixes. To do that, you click on the sort button again and you choose edit sort order. Now select the appendixes at the top. I use shift and click to select them, and then just click and drag them to the bottom of the list like this. When done, I just release it and they are there. Let me just move the title page, summary and the forward to the top as well. Just scroll down like this and scroll to the top. And when I'm ready, I just release them like that and click on done. Now, that's one way to reorganize notes. What you can also do, in this case, for example, I of course want the title page to be first. Then I can press Command key, Control on PC, and just up on the keyboard like that. And it's being moved as well. So you can see in to the right, you have the sort index field 3375. If I press Command up again, it's changed to 1125. So this is very handy if you're using the keyboard and want to move around many nodes or one node. Just shift and move the select, and then press Command or Control to just move them up or down like that. Now I'm pretty happy. I have the title page, the forward and summary, and then starting with the introduction. Now, something that is missing now in the list is the group headers. And group headers are very handy to split this kind of documents into sections. So let's add some group headers to make it easier to navigate and find the way things you're working at. So let's start at the first chapter, getting started. You right click and you click set group header and you say part 1, getting started. And you click save. And now you have a section here that says getting started. And you can also see in the note properties that it has saved this as a property within the note, part 1, getting started. Let's add a few more. So we scroll down to ownership. Set the group header here, part 2. And we scroll down into structs and we create a group header here as well. Like that. So the group headers are very useful to collapse things that you're done with. Say I'm done writing the getting started. I don't want to work on that anymore now. Then I can just click the collapse button and hide it like that. Maybe I want to hide the ownership. You can hide it like that or expand it. This makes it very easy to just focus on the things that you're working on right now in this large list of documents. Now, as you can see, I have word counts enabled on all the nodes. So if you look at the suffix here, you can see that I have a word counter enabled. This is accessible in settings, Notebook Navigator. You go into the file display, and at the bottom here, you can say word and character count. And you can place them in the title, you show them as a property. And you can also show a percentage if you have a target goal for each note as well. But in this case, let's start with ownership, and we right click and we change the header, and we can just click on show word count like that. Now it will show you the total number of words for this entire section. Let's say we wanted to have 15,000 words in this ownership section. Then I can right click, change it, and set the target word count of 50,000. And now you will even get a progress bar. How far have you come to this kind of 15,000 goal word count? Now you can do so many more things with that. By default, it will count the words and use the word counter here as well. If you set a custom word counter, you can do that as well within the notes. For example, if you change the group header and empty this, it says that when this field is empty, the group goal uses the target property set in notes settings word and character counts. So if you want to use a specific target for each note, you can set that in the file display bottom, and you have this kind of property target word goal here. I can show you how it works. Let's say that this is 100, and you can see it starts counting straight away here. Here we maybe use 700, and here, yeah, like that. So you can see all the different options you have for working with this one. It's really flexible. Now, the last thing I wanted to show you is the merge notes feature. So let's say we're done with part 2 here, and we just want to ship it. Then we can mark all the notes like this. We right click and we choose merge notes, and we can output it as part 2. And you can choose which kind of separate you want between the notes, maybe a blank line, horizontal rule. We'll use blank line. And you can move them to trash if you want to after you're done. Then click merge. The interesting part here is that, as you can see, you got the part 2 here. The interesting part you see is that it looks just like a regular note, like that. Everything is merged into one single note. And of course, in this case, I will remove the group header and the word goal, and I will just move it to the top as well. So I can just add its sort order, like that. And now part 2 is done. So this is typically how you do when we are finished with a specific section. You can just merge it, and you're done for publishing it. In this section, I want to show you the calendar features of Notebook Navigator. There are 2 main reasons why Notebook Navigator has a calendar built in. And the first one is that it's just a very simple way to both navigate and visualize your notes based on months, and select the notes, for example, for a day or a week or a quarter or a year. It's just a very simple way to navigate and filter out your notes. The second part is that we already have this kind of thumbnail images in a database, which means that when looking at the calendar, we can actually show the images for a specific day based on these thumbnails. So it's very quick to display images from specific dates. Let me show you how it works. You start the calendar by pressing the calendar button in the top left corner here. And by default, it's shown in the bottom of the navigation pane. So if you go into settings and scroll down to the calendar settings, you have quite many settings to change related to the calendar. And let's start with that from the top. The first one is the placement. I typically like to put it in the right sidebar, like that. And we can drag it to the top. And the Notebook Navigator will remember the position of the calendar. So if you restart Obsidian, it will start the calendar in exactly the same position as it was the last time. As you can see, it uses the English locale with the week starts on Sunday. If you want to change that, you can change the locale, which changes the date formatting, week numbering, and the first day of the week. You can also change if you want to show weekend dates or not. Let's use it like that. Then you can also, of course, make the monthly display date longer or shorter. We want to show the week numbers as well. Right now it's week 29, and we can also show the quarter after the month. The year calendar below can be hidden, but I will show you how we can use that later. Now, how do we decide which notes we show in that calendar? We have a folder called Journal, where we have journal notes, and they are named year, month, and date. So let's go into settings again and make sure that Notebook Navigator finds those notes. So we have the root folder for notes, and we call that journal. And then we name the notes. In this case, the daily notes, we name them year, month, and day. Boom. Now we see the notes in the calendar right away. So we can navigate by clicking on a month down here, or going back and forward like this. To change the image that is used as a highlight, you can just right click any note and pick change highlight to change the highlight here. And this kind of becomes like a yearly calendar. So if you move between years, you can see, okay, what happened in each specific month in the calendar. You also see that some of the days have empty circles, the month and days like this. And that is when you have unfinished tasks for each day. So if you just complete these tasks, then the hollow circle will disappear from the calendar. If you don't want this kind of tasks integration, you can just go into settings and just disable show tasks. But it's a handy feature to have. Now, this is for displaying your journal notes. And there are two things that you can do in the calendar to select notes. For example, if you hold down the command key and press a specific date, you will now show the notes from that specific day. So if I click on the root vault and enable show files from subfolders, I now have two files, the journal entry and the take insights that we just created. I can click the week, command click the week, and now I will see all the notes from this week. So what are my weekly notes? I can do that. And if I want to, of course, I can save that as a shortcut as week 29. And now I can very quickly just click week 29 to select all my notes from that week. I can command click on the month, see all the notes from the month or the quarter. So this is just a super handy way to select your notes for specific weeks or months or quarters or even year. You can actually click the year as well, like that. Now, if you're looking at the week here, it's not that good to also see all the journal notes. So I typically like to hide them from showing when I have show notes from subfolders enabled. I do this by going to settings, going into display filter section. Here you remember we had chose to hide the resources folder. And then you have a setting called exclude folders from descendants. And here we just enter /journal. And now all the notes in the journal folder will be hidden when we have show notes from subfolders enabled. You will also see that it has parentheses around the number in the journal folder here. We can still access them by clicking the journal folder, and we will still see them for this week's notes, but you won't see them in the root folder. So this is, I think, very handy when you want to see all the notes from a specific month or a specific week. But you don't want to see all the journal notes from that specific period. Notebook Navigator has a feature called folder notes. And if you have used folder notes before, you know that it's a note that appears when you click on a folder. Well, Notebook Navigator has that, but way much more than that, which makes it much more flexible and much more useful for so many more different occasions than just clicking on a folder to see a note. To enable folder notes, you go into settings and you scroll down into navigation pane, folders and folder notes. And by default, folder notes are disabled. You have to enable it by clicking the setting. And let me just show you first how it works. I go back to the editor and I right click the photo folder and I can now choose create folder note. And as you can see, it opened in the editor, and this is my folder note for photo. Now, if I click back on a note like this, you can see you have now photo folders underlined. So if I click the photo like this, I can now direct access my folder note. This is not very useful, I think, for me at least. I really didn't understand the use for folder notes in this specific way, because it's just cumbersome to have to click on this folder notes in that way, and just it made the list become messy as well, I think. So what I did was added another way to access folder notes. So if you go back to settings, you can now choose to open the folder notes in the right sidebar instead. And this is so much more useful. As you can see now, you have below the calendar, you have the folder notes appearing in the right sidebar. This means that you can use it as a scratch pad. So let me go into Rust and let me create a folder note for the Rust programming manual as well. So create folder note here as well. Things to do. Merge chapter 3. Finish the book. So you can use this as a scratch pad. Now, look what happens when I pick the folder lenses on the photo. Boom. It knows that I'm in a subfolder to the photo folder, which has a folder note, and it opens the scratch pad for the folder note within the right sidebar. The same way, if I go back to Rust, it immediately opens the folder as well. I can click on the file, I can go back to photo, and click the file. This makes folder notes so much more useful because it becomes this kind of scratch pad. So if you're working with different books, you can even do this if you have, for lenses, for example. Let me create a new folder note here for lenses, things to do with lenses. Now, if I go back to another folder, for like Flash, it goes back to the photo scratch pad. If I click on lenses, it picks the lenses folder note. You go to Rust, it always picks the one with a current context. And this is, I think, when I come up with this idea how to work with it, it was just, wow, yeah, this is how folder notes was always supposed to work from the beginning. And now I use it every day, in every time, in every vault I work with in Obsidian. So give folder notes a try. Start looking at the different settings you can set up in folder notes. You go back in the settings. Yeah, if you use them in the right sidebar, you don't really need to change them much. Of course, you can change them. If you don't want them to be marked down, you can actually have folder notes created as canvas and base folders. And you can also change how the name will look like. If you don't want the folder notes to be the same name like the folder itself, you can change that as well. And by default, folder notes are hidden from the list. If you want them to be visible, of course, you can just disable that setting as well. And that is folder notes supercharged by Notebook Navigator. If you're coming from an application like Beer or Evernote or Apple Notes, there aren't that many things you can customize in the user interface. You can customize icons and colors, but when it comes to Notebook Navigator, it's on a whole new level. Let me show you a little bit of what you can do. So let's start with our photo folder and start with adding an icon to it. So we right click and we do change icon, and we can write the camera. And as you can see, the icons we have are from Vault. If you have an SVG image in the Vault, it will actually use the SVG image as an icon if you want to. You can also use emojis, and you have lucid icons. This is kind of the icons that ship within Obsidian. Now, let's say you wanted to be more icons. You can then go into settings, scroll down to icon packs, and click download on the icon packs you want to download. The way this works is that Notebook Navigator saves into settings the icon packs you have downloaded to the device. So when it syncs to, for example, your mobile device, it will too download the icon packs to the mobile device into its database. These icons are downloaded from the GitHub repo, so you can actually see in the GitHub repo exactly what is downloaded, so it's not going anywhere else. And of course, everything has been scanned thoroughly by scanners and so on. Now, if I go back to the photo folder, right-click and change icon and right camera, you now see I have many more different options for choosing a camera. I can pick from a bootstrap icon, font awesome, material icons, phosphor, and this looks pretty good, the camera from the material icons. I can also change the background color for this. So let me pick a nice color here. You can pick transparency. You have a preview in the top as well to see how it will look. And I'm pretty happy with that one. Maybe we give it some color as well. And I click apply. Now, as you can see, colors are inherited by subfolders, and this also goes for tags. So if I want to copy the style into the tags, I can just copy the style by right-clicking, choosing style, copy style, and paste it into the tag like this, and I have the same style for the tags. Maybe I want to change the color for a Rust folder as well, so I go into change color, and this Rust, maybe do it to Rust. Sorry, remove that one in the background. Let's pick that kind of red color like this. Maybe we want to do the color white instead. Like that. Okay, nice. Now, of course, this looks like a bit messy because they're connected to each other. To change that, let's go into settings, and we go into the navigation pane. This is where you customize how things look in the navigation pane. And we scroll down, and you find setting here called root item spacing. And this is the amount of spacing that is put between the root folders here. So let's put this into 3. And now you can see you have a spacing between the root folders like this. Maybe put it at 8. This makes it much easier to separate the two folders from each other. You can also, of course, change other things. If you want to decrease the item height here, you can do that as well. By default, it scales the item height with the row height. You can disable that if you want to. Restore it. You can change the tree indentation if you want that. If you want it to look like a table of contents, you can show leaders like that. Then it looks like a table of contents. And you can even show indents guides to the left if you want to as well. So this is just showing you some of the parts of the things you can customize with the Notebook Navigator. It's just so many different ways you can customize things. Let me show you another way. And I'm already having fun here. Let me remove these colors. Remove the style here. Yeah, we clear it, and we clear that one. You have another setting which is funny. It's called rainbow colors. So we go back into folder settings in navigation pane, and you have rainbow colors. If you enable the rainbow colors, we'll put it to text color. All the folders will be using a rainbow color like that. You can apply it to shortcuts, recent items, and you can do so many things with this. By default, it's using a transition style, which is hue, which means that it will go through all the rainbow colors. You can choose it to be RGB, which means that it will be interpolating between the start and end color as well. You can also do the folder scope to make it like on every level if you want to repeat it and so on. Yeah, this is a nice way you can make things pop a bit more. You can even apply it to the background color if you want to. And you can, of course, set transparent colors and so on if you want to do that as well. Let me just remove this one as well. But this just gives you a little bit of insights in how you can customize all the different things. So just play around with the settings, see how you find things, and change things as you want to. The final feature I want to show you is something called Vault Profiles. Obsidian saves all your files into a folder called Vault, and then this Vault is synced between all your devices using Obsidian. Now, many users, they like to separate their files into many different vaults. For example, they have a personal vault, they have a work vault, And maybe you even have a writing vault where you have just the files just for writing, so you're not distracted by everything else that's happening within your vault. Maybe you have like a YouTube video you want to check or something like that. You just don't want to think about that when you're writing your articles or documents. The problem with using different vaults like that is that each individual vault has its own settings for themes and plugins. And you can't sync those between the vaults. So if you have, say, 10 or 15 plugins in your personal vault, say Notebook Navigator, and you change a few settings, then you also need to open the work vault to change the same settings to make it look the same. And you also need to open the writing vault to make that look the same. And if you update a theme in the personal vault, you then need to remember to open the work vault and update the theme. It's just a mess to work with multiple vaults like that, because there's no way to keep the themes and plugin settings, or even Obsidian settings, in sync between the vaults. They are just isolated, separate vaults. To solve that, Notebook Navigator has a feature called Vault Profiles, which gives you virtual vaults within the vault folder. Let me show you how it works. So, we go into Settings, and at the top of Notebook Navigator, you see I have a setting called Vault Profile, which is default. Let's add a new profile and call it Writing, and submit. And the only thing that happened now is that you get a new label at the top left that says Writing. You can click on it to change the default, but otherwise it looks identical. Now, when we are in a Writing vault profile, let's try to hide a few folders. Right-click Photo and hide that one. Let's hide Tech Insights, hide the journal, and hide the inbox. Now, everything that's left in the vault here is the Writing. It's a Rust folder. I don't see anything else. If you open the tags, you can see I don't have anything tags here as well. This is just it. I just have my 114 untagged files. If I want to back to the default vault, I can just click here and go back to the default vault, and I see them there. This is the beauty of switching between different work contexts or private contexts. So how does it work? Well, if you go into Settings, and if you remember, we've changed the folder visibility in the display filter section. Every of these filters have a suffix called Vault Profile after them, which means that this setting is saved to the Vault Profile. And now we're in the Writing Vault Profile, and it has hidden the resources as before, Photo, Tech Insights, Journal, and Inbox. Now, if we close Settings, go back to default, we go into Settings, and we go into Display Filters, you can see here we only hide the resources folder. So this is the beauty. You will see all through Settings many different settings that have this kind of suffix Vault Profile. For example, if you go into Navigation pane, you have one setting here called Navigation Banner. Maybe you want to show an image at the top left here. That is also a Vault Profile. So you can maybe show an image that this is my work documents with our work logo, and maybe another image for your personal notes. So extremely flexible to work with. That was kind of the work profiles. The last thing I want to show you is if you click on this button, it says Disable Sync. This means that this setting will be saved individually on each device. So if I disable Vault Profile, it means that each of my devices, my phone can have its own Vault Profiles, and my computer can have its own Vault Profiles. Maybe my laptop can have other Vault Profiles. If I enable the sync here, then all devices will have the same Vault Profiles. So my phone will have the Writing profile and the default profile, and so on. So what this basically does is that it changes it. So instead of saving this setting into this shared setting between all devices, it saves it to a local setting instead. And there are quite lots of settings. If you scroll around into the settings, you will find quite a lot of settings that have this kind of cloud. For example, if you want to pin the image banner to the top, maybe you don't want that on all devices. Maybe you don't want it on mobile. You just disable it. And if you disable it on one device, it will be disabled on all devices. So the sync setting is toggled for each device, if that makes sense. Yeah, maybe it doesn't. But anyway, if you want things to be individual for each device, just click that one to disable the sync for that one. Otherwise, the setting is saved within the data.json file, which is saved within the vault, which is synced between all the devices. Yeah. Okay, it's time to wrap up. I promised you in the last chapter that vault profiles would be the last feature I was going to demonstrate, but I just remember that I want to show you one more thing that's very cool, and that is Frontmatter properties. Each note in Obsidian have a section called Frontmatter properties, and it's at the top like this. If you show it notes in source mode, you will see that you have this kind of 3 dashes, and you have a property and value. And many times it would be nice to use this property like title instead of showing the file name in the list. So let me show you how you can do that. You go into settings and scroll down into list pane Frontmatter fields here. And just click on enable, use Frontmatter data, and you have all these kind of different settings you can change here. Now, let's start with the first one, title. We want to show the contents of this property instead of the file name. So we just click on the name field and pick title. And now it looks so much better. Now instead of showing the file name, we show the actual title for this specific note. Now the cool thing about Frontmatter metadata is that you can also save icon and color for specific files into the file itself. So let's say I want to change, I need to write on what is ownership, so I want to mark that one. So I'll right click the one, pick change icon, and warning, this is important. I want to do that, and maybe pick a color as well. So no, not that one. I take the background color. So I really remember that this is something I need to change, like that. Now we can see these settings for this file has been saved to the Frontmatter. So the icon is saved into the Frontmatter as well as the background color. If I go into here and change the background color, the Frontmatter is updated automatically. If I disable the Frontmatter fields again, of course it won't be able to read the icon and background again, and the title. So typically this is something that you want to keep enabled, but then be aware that it saves things into your notes. This is why this settings is off by default, because the way Notebook Navigator is designed is that it won't mess with your files if you're not asking it to that. If you enable manual sorting, it will warn you that this will add a sort property to your fields. If you add a group header to manual sorting, it will warn you. If you want to save icon and color and background color to the Frontmatter data, you need to specifically enable it. Otherwise, Notebook Navigator won't touch your files at all. This is by design. So that was the last thing I wanted to show you. You can also, of course, if you have a created timestamp in notes, this is also very useful. There are other plugins that can actually write the timestamp when the note was created. In many times, when you sync files, depending on which sync provider you use, it has a tendency to change the creation time of the file. So if you log that with another plugin, you can then actually show the creation time here based on the Frontmatter field here. Just make sure to edit the timestamp format so it matches your set format in the Frontmatter. Now, I think I clear that style like that. So that was the Mastering Notebook Navigator 3 tutorial. I hope you had fun watching it. If you have any questions at all, come to our Discord. You will find the link at notebooknavigator.com or at the GitHub repository. And if you have any features you want to add to Notebook Navigator, send them in as a feature request. Right now I don't accept pull requests to the repo because I want to have control of the code and I have no problems keeping me up to date with coding. On the contrary, many users say that I write too much code, that I should slow down, and we'll see about that. But many thanks for watching the video and have fun using Notebook Navigator. Bye.